Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, members. Good evening, officers. Good evening, members of the public. This is the Cabinet meeting for Thursday, the 10th of September 2020, starting at 5 p.m. It's a Microsoft Teams event online, and we'll follow the usual protocol. So I need to remind all participants to mute their mics and indicate either in the chat line or by yellow hand or physical hand if you wish to speak. Can I briefly at this stage welcome Brian Tidal, Councillor Brian Tidal, as the new Cabinet member, a subject which I will return to in my chairman's announcements at item 4. If I can now turn us to the agenda. Item 1 is the minutes of the meeting, just to confirm they're a true record. Could members indicate that they're happy that they are a true record, please? Okay, I'm seeing Councillor Ward, Mosdell, Abraham, Whittle, Brading, Steve Hastings, Stuart Hutchinson, myself. Brian, you weren't at the meeting, so that's fine. I think I've accounted for everybody. To the officers, is that okay? Do you need anything more from me?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll now move on to declarations of interest. This is just to confirm that any declarations of interest other than those already on members' records are disclosed. I will highlight to members that I have been confirmed as a member of the Local Government Association Stronger and Safer Communities Board, and I am now a director of the public sector transformation company called IESE, Easy. Are there any other declarations of interest? None showing. I'll move on to item 3. This relates to public questions. 15 minutes have been allowed for public questions. They need to be submitted in writing. And to the officers, I only have one question from a Mr. Dowse. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the only one we've received, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll read the question and then I'll read the response. The question says, now that the leader of the Isle of Wight Council, Councillor Stewart, has publicly admitted on Isle of Wight radio that Cowes Floating Bridge number 6 is in effect a total failure, when would the Isle of Wight Council place an order for a new Cowes Floating Bridge to replace it? And my response is as follows. Thank you for your question, Mr. Dowse. As you know, the issues and challenges with Floating Bridge 6 emanate back to its purchase and contract, which were overseen by the previous independent administration. You will also recall the floating bridge was funded with a grant from the Solent local enterprise of some £3.5 million. Since that time, the current Conservative administration has inherited responsibility for management of the new bridge and all its issues and challenges arising since May 2017. Our primary focus has been to maintain the essential service and vital link this vessel provides between East and West Cowes, enabling children to get to school, workers to get to work, and visitors to travel to Cowes. We recognise the design and construction of a chain link ferry is unique and not something you can just get off the shelf. When it arrived on the island in May 2017, everyone expected it to work correctly and provide a good service for the community for years to come. What we did not expect was the catalogue of problems we have since experienced over the subsequent years, which include key issues around chain depth, noise, broken prow arms, electrical issues, and most recently with the overall hydraulic system. Added challenges recently being the need to remove it from service during the main parts of the St Mary's roundabout roadworks during August and September, creating a perfect storm of disruption when we least needed it. You are right insofar as I have been drawn to question whether this vessel was fit for purpose when it was designed and constructed, as agreed in the contract, and this needs to be resolved. Having taken legal advice, the Council is following the steps agreed in the contract to secure appropriate remedy for the damages that it, and by inference the local community, has suffered. The Council must now follow the prescribed pre-action procedures set out in the contracts and by the courts in order to seek appropriate redress. Discussions are ongoing between the Council and the two companies contracted to design and build the floating bridge, and these discussions will be completed in the normal process. If the required pre-action discussions do not conclude with a satisfactory remedy, then it will be open to the Council to issue court proceedings to seek remedy, including financial loss. I think it would be inappropriate for me to comment further on this aspect at this stage, whilst we seek to find a legal resolution. A full report on this position was presented to scrutiny on Tuesday, and as agreed with scrutiny, I will also be meeting the local ward councillors and a small group of experts to hear their thoughts and ideas on the future. In the meanwhile, our plan is to fix the current problem with the hydraulics and ensure the vessel is back in the water as soon as possible. We have no plans at this time to order a new floating bridge. In terms of cost, can I point out that we've effectively paid £1 subsidy for every person who has travelled on the vessel since 2017. But we know this is not sustainable in the current financial climate, so I believe we need to fix it, recover our losses on behalf of the community. Thank you for your question. There are no other questions, so I'm going to move on in the agenda. And these are Chairman's announcements. Have the following announcements to make. Firstly, to welcome Councillor Brian Tidal to the Cabinet in replacement of Councillor John Hobart, who stepped down to focus on his ward. Councillor Tidal currently represents the ward of Brading, St Helens and Bembridge. He brings to the Cabinet that experience, as well as his previous experience of Chair of Audit and his previous mainland experience on a council of Buckinghamshire. He assumes the responsibilities for finance and resources, which enables me to appoint the Deputy Leader, Stuart Hutchinson, to provide leadership and responsibility for our COVID-19 recovery plan and our strategic finances, which are now so interlinked. Secondly, to confirm that Councillor Abraham and I are actively working with our Island MP, Bob Seeley, to respond to the government's latest white paper on planning, and I anticipate providing a further update on this at next month's meeting when we will address the council's housing strategy. Finally, can I confirm that we have secured the acquisition of Venture Keys and already the potential for income and employment from this investment is being realised? I've no doubt Councillor Whittle will expand on this good news in his report later in the meeting. Members, I'm now going to move to item 5, which is the report of the Cabinet Member for Strategic Resources in COVID-19, and invite Councillor Hutchinson to introduce the Recovery Plan report, which is at paper B. Pass to you, Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Leader. This is the first of what will be a series of reports on issues that we have to face as we move through the COVID-19 emergency and hopefully to better times beyond. Firstly, can I say that I'm really grateful for the huge amount of work that has been done by officers in pulling this report together and the help I've had from my colleague Councillor Steve Hastings, because we have been working on this issue now for several weeks. The report itself will be familiar to Cabinet members. You've all had the papers a week or so ago. It runs into around 30 pages and covers a very broad spectrum because our recovery plan has to encompass every element of the life of the island. That is to say, its community life, its social life, its economic well-being, and also our relationship with government, which has financed enormously the amount of money that has gone towards supporting businesses, particularly in the early days of the COVID emergency. The report, as colleagues will know, was carefully considered at some length by the Scrutiny Committee, and we have taken on board the recommendations from that committee, which were primarily overall support, but to say, could we have a greater emphasis on having an economic representative on the recovery teams? That is already referred to in the plan, but we are happy to look at what we do. I would like to move straight to our recommendation at the end of the report, which is firstly that obviously members agree the overall content, but set out at page B10 in paragraph 64 and 65 that we now seek partner views on this first iteration of the plan, and that we will revise and update it as things change. At the moment, we are looking to revise it probably once a quarter, but if circumstances change rapidly, as they appear to do with this pandemic, we will do so more frequently. So that is option one. And option two, because we want not just Cabinet to be involved with the approvals of what we do, but our Health and Wellbeing Board, because the oversight of all of this, at least in its early phases, must be to keep everyone safe and healthy whilst we progress the economic recovery. So I would propose to colleagues that we accept the recommendations, option one at paragraph 64 and option two at paragraph 65, and I seek a seconder for that recommendation.
I see Councillor Hastings' hand, so I'm happy for him to be recorded as the seconder. He may wish to speak. Can I just highlight the element you referred to, Councillor Hutchinson? For people really following the papers, it's B12. As chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, I think it's a very appropriate thing that we should have that oversight, which enables us to continue to look at the health and well-being across the island, be it rural, be it town. Can I also highlight that the proposal that you mentioned to include the Economic Development Board as a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board, I have today spoken with the chair of that board. He's very pleased to be able to do that and bring his enormous experience from an economic perspective, which, as you rightly say, was a highlight point from scrutiny, who otherwise thought how comprehensive this report was, and the principles contained in it were evidence-based and set out in a clear action plan, and so I'm grateful for that. Does any other member wish to speak to the paper? Councillor Hastings.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just very briefly, just as I was involved with this on the weekly basis with Councillor Hutchinson, I just want to say how impressed I've been with officers, as each week we get a new section come forward to put this report together, and it's just been very impressive. Considering we're in an unprecedented situation with COVID-19, which is still ongoing, of course, so therefore it will be a movable document, but it's just been very impressive to see it come together as it has, and therefore I'm absolutely happy to second it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Well, on that basis, it's been presented and seconded. I think I'll go to the vote from members. So Councillor Ward. I can't hear you. If you can wave your hand up as for as well. So you're for. Councillor Abraham. For. Thank you. Councillor Mosdell.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Whittle.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Tyndall.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brading.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Peace.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hastings.
For.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Well, goes without saying that.
It goes without saying, and I'm for as well. So that's unanimous. Thank you very much to everybody. I have to say it's a very comprehensive document and reflects the standards that we want. That's good. Councillor Hutchinson, I'm now going to invite you to introduce the quarterly performance report. This is presented at paper C, and then I will invite any comments from Cabinet members in relation to it. And then I have a comment myself, which I'll bring in at the end. So back to you, Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Leader. This is a routine report, and unusually there are 2 quarters information in it because of the delays we've experienced during the pandemic. It's very comprehensive, again, as we expect from our officers. The report is a straightforward factual document, and following comments on previous reports, we've made sure that it is as digestible as possible, although by necessity it is very data dense. I will only comment on a couple of elements which are to do with the financial part of it, which obviously is my significant interest. On the Q1, we were proceeding extremely well, and Q4, we ended the financial year with a very slight saving against our budget target of slightly over £1 million, and in accordance with policy, we added that to our reserve system. And wasn't that a good thing we did? Because when we now look at the outcome of Q1, which includes the COVID elements, we are now registering that we could have a potential shortfall there of at least 8.4 million. We are going to have to work on that, and in fact we have already started to look at what we can do to revise priorities, to make additional savings, to raid all of the little pockets of contingency and so on to meet that shortfall, because of course if we cannot recover it in the remaining quarters of the current financial year, that automatically becomes a first call on our money for the next financial year, and we already are aware that that financial year is probably going to be the most difficult of any that we have faced in the last few years. So those are the only comments I would make. Obviously each portfolio holder is well aware of the situation within their particular portfolio and is recorded in the quarterly report. I will just mention, of course, that now Councillor Tidal has joined us on Cabinet. He will be the lucky man that presents this report to future meetings of Cabinet, and he and I have already had discussions about the transfer of this and other responsibilities, so that we have a smooth transition as our portfolios change. That was all I wished to say on that particular report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. I'll move around the Cabinet. Don't feel obliged to speak, but I'll start with Councillor Mosdell.
Thank you. Just to report that as of the end of July, adult social care is no longer projecting an overspend, and we will have saved 661,000 to date. Considering the demand on the services within adult social care, I think we need to really congratulate all the staff that work within that department for actually getting to this point. I think it's quite stunning performance, actually.
Thank you for that, Claire. That is an outstanding comment, and we certainly have not skimped in this council on the current COVID-19 situation. I've seen for myself the enormous amount of money that we spent, but it's just been very good and very effective position. Councillor Ward, did you want to add comment? You're muted, Ian, at the moment. You just need to unmute. Sorry.
Leader, I've got a couple actually.
Okay.
The phase 1 pop-up cycling and walking proposals that we put together under the direction of the government, we put on hold, quite frankly, to review, and that's come about because the government changed its policy over the weekend. And said that actually we should stop these now and consult. So that is exactly what we are going to do. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And the second one, and I'm quite chuffed about this one. A recent announcement from ComRes said that the island's A, B and C roads are the most improved in the country. Okay, I mean, it's always really populist to attack our PFI and you know how bad our roads are, etc., etc. But it's great to get an independent body that comes along and said they are the most improved in the country. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Ian. And I know those comments have been echoed by the various cyclists that we've had from elsewhere coming to the island at the moment who are extremely impressed with the roads on the island. Councillor Brading, Paul Brading.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I just want to re-emphasise a couple of points that actually were made at Children's Services Scrutiny Panel last week. In whole of Q2, obviously, we're during lockdown, and we put together a three-phased strategy to deal with children's services during lockdown. And it's pleasing to confirm we've remained at stage 1 right through the whole of lockdown. Stage 1 being business as usual, albeit meetings have been done in a slightly different way, virtual where possible, for the service to maintain itself business as usual during this unprecedented times. It's a great credit to the entire Children's Services team. I can only thank them for what they've done. But also during that time, we've been planning for what we really predict could be an increase in numbers of children needing support going forward, especially now children are back into school. But all that planning has been done, put in place, and Children's Services Scrutiny Panel last week were really impressed with the presentation of the measures we've put in place as part of our recovery plan. Should the numbers spike or go up as we expect them to do so. And equally, the final point really is we've done some investment in our transformation program, and it really is paying off. So it just shows if you invest in the right programs for care for your children, and we're going to keep that going forward because it's having a real benefit to the service that we offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Barry, did you want to make any comments? Yeah, Barry Abraham.
Yes, please, Leader. Just one thing with planning is the planning enforcement. It does appear that during the lockdown, people have actually taken the opportunity to do a lot of work in their gardens and to their houses. And unfortunately, there has been quite a surge in complaints to the council about planning enforcement, which has put pressure on the enforcement team. They will get around to catching up with the work, but I think we need to make it clear that they won't be as quick response as sometimes we like to think that there is, because of all the sheer number of complaints that actually have come in. I think people have taken the opportunity to do some things that have annoyed their neighbours.
Thank you, Barry. Wayne, did you want to add anything? Not essential, but if you have.
Well, just the good news, really. After months of negotiations, the Isle of Wight Council has now purchased the Columbine, or the Venture Key site, it's known by many names, for 1.3 million, which is good when you think when we started negotiations, Homes England was asking about 3 million for it. And I just wanted to say that, this fulfills our commitment to acquire this important asset and will enable us to take forward our plans that support both East Cowes and the wider island community. At a time when we know the island economy is under pressure, affecting homes and jobs, I'm pleased we can now announce this good news. It also allows us to progress development of housing for the community in the area, and more information on this will follow on shortly. Investing in the prime waterfront site with its crucial deep water access will preserve key employment land for the benefit of the island's workforce for many years to come. And I'm just glad we finally got it in the bag. And obviously we all supported this as a cabinet because we understand the importance of this site for island jobs.
Thank you, Wayne, and please can you thank all the officers. You're absolutely right. There was an awful lot of work went into secure that site, and indeed our MP engaged with us as well, and I think that was a total team effort, and it now enables us to take advantage of it. So as the owners of that property and the land around it, we can now move forward, and I know there's going to be more good news coming, so thank you very much for that. Gary, is there anything you wanted to add on the performance side of things?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I just want to draw attention to a few things actually within my portfolio. So firstly, we've got community safety. It remains extremely busy. dealing with our response to recovery from COVID. Business as usual is affected, unfortunately, some more than others, and we're actively trying to secure extra funding and resources to assist the teams. You'll all have heard about the latest government guidelines on social distancing and COVID response and so on and so forth. So we're waiting for detailed guidance currently on what we can and can't do. And as you might expect, we're receiving a huge amount of inquiries as to how this will apply to business and events. Moving on to digital transformation. So the council's website project, despite the delays caused by COVID and because the IT team were too busy dealing with COVID response, the project is progressing really well. We've got a new website design that has been agreed. And we've also agreed the works for the build and delivery of a beta site, and we're on track for the introduction of the new website by the end of November 2020. We're also about to go live with our new democratic administration system called ModGov. Essentially, it's an easier online platform for members of the public to find and access council meetings, papers and information. So that should make things an awful lot easier for our residents to find information. And lastly, I want to give I want to give a shout out to our bereavement services team. These guys have been overlooked in our response to COVID. They're working extremely hard and have been working extremely hard over the last few months dealing with COVID, to be honest, and making sure that the service continues to deliver to the highest possible standards in these really difficult times. So that's me for updates with regards to portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Hastings, is there anything you wanted to add in relation to waste?
Yes, Leader, if you can bear with me, what I'd like to do is read out something that I had prepared for the scrutiny meeting on Tuesday, but unfortunately, due to time constraints, the chair couldn't allow it on that meeting. But if you're happy for me to go forward with that, I will do.
Yeah, happy. I want to get all the performance information out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, members of hopefully members of the council will find the performance report quite self-explanatory. But I wanted to say a few words by way of introduction. The waste contract commenced in 2015 is based on an outcomes approach and output specification. Measuring performance within this contract demonstrates the annual improvements made towards achieving the contract aims of treating waste as a valuable resource, delivering high quality and value for money services for the residents of the island, reducing non-essential waste landfill to zero. Through the excellent management of the service provider and strong partnership working, which is really important because we're nominated for that partnership for an award this year. The performance data from January through June 2020 demonstrates that even under the challenges of a pandemic, this contract can and does robustly deliver. Waste collection services operating effectively without any disruptions, which I think is quite remarkable through the pandemic. This is also an opportunity to thank the excellent and diligent hard work of the collection crews on our waste and recycling rounds, who have worked tirelessly to keep our household waste collection service operating as normal during the lockdown period. Not all heroes wear bright red capes. It has been a very challenging time nonetheless. Together we increased recycling at the curbside by 27%. Something we should be very proud of and need to keep going. In July last year, the 17 million investment in the country's first twin stream mechanical treatment plant, which has enabled the contract to exceed in Q4 and Q1, the target to divert 90% of waste from landfill, with 99.98% of contract waste diverted by June. This is an outstanding achievement. Further, our recycling rate continues to sit at 56%, which puts us high in the national rankings, and I think we're nominated there as well for the awards this year. I think we're nominated for 2, and is hoped to increase with the ongoing community effort to further reduce, reuse and recycle. Not to mention up and coming, it's been delayed by COVID, but we'll be back on track soon for our energy from waste plant will get completed hopefully by next spring. And just very briefly, the household waste recycling centres, commonly known as the TIPs, I think we've done an exceedingly good job to get them back with the booking system operating. We've had compliment after compliment, and I believe, Leader, a compliment from yourself at one point when you used the service, to the extent that our strategic manager for waste and environment was actually asked to speak to the Association of Public Service Excellence, which she did recently, to 40 other members, to tell them what we did and how we did it. So where we lead, others follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all cabinet members. Brian, I won't ask for a report from you because you're going to inherit that in the next month or so.
Sorry,
did you want to comment on what you've heard?
Yeah, it's purely just to thank Stuart for his handover to me. Very full and very thorough. And just like to thank him because he ended it in good political tradition. He handed me a note giving me the current status of the funding.
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to come on to that. And I know, I hope the people of Brading, St Helens and Bembridge will appreciate that you're going to give your time to the centre as well, because I know how hard you're working locally. And there's three things that come out from this cabinet members for me. This is strong leadership across the piece. This is keeping our community safe. And this is ensuring that our council is sustainable. And if we do those three things, then I think we're all doing a good job for our community. So members, this report was noted by Scrutiny Committee, and that's it. And if there are any issues going forward, they said they would take them up with the cabinet member, but then they had no issues to take up with the cabinet member. So I think we can move forward. Councillor Hutchinson has outlined the recommendation, which is at page C13. I think we read it out, Stuart, didn't we? If not, I can do that.
I can do if you wish, Leader. It is simply that Cabinet approves the performance and finance reports for the quarter ended March 31st and the quarter ended June 2020, and the detail is set out in the appendices, and the council's financial position, which is also set out in 4 further appendices. So I would hope council will, cabinet will accept it and note it.
Happy to second it. Just indication, please, if you're happy to note the report. Councillor Brading, I see, yes. Councillor Ward, yes. Councillor Barry Abraham, yes. Brian Tyndall, yes.
Sorry, Chairman, it's the Chief Executive. I wonder if for the record we could call names and people could acknowledge.
I'll get them to do that, Chief Exec. It's good to know you're there, guarding my shoulder. Councillor Brading.
4.
Councillor Ward.
4.
Councillor Abraham.
4.
Councillor Mosdell.
5. Sorry, 4.
Councillor Whittle.
4.
Councillor Tyndall.
4.
Councillor Hastings.
4.
Councillor Peace.
4.
Councillor Hutchinson.
4.
And I vote 4. So that's a unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 6, which is the PTEC report. So this is presented by myself and the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Business Development. I'll do a short introduction on this. For some people, this will be new information, some old. But the members, the council declared a climate emergency with an aspiration for the island to be net zero by 2030. The PTEC project involves converting tidal stream energy into electricity sufficient to provide carbon-free power to a quarter of the island homes. Now, the council previously invested some £1 million in this project. The project looks to explore and develop the opportunities for renewable energy, potentially bringing employment as well as maintaining our green agenda strategy. The report reflects a request from PTEC for a further investment of £244,000 to progress the project, and a summary of the council's response related to our current financial challenges and priorities is outlined in the report. Can I also say, bear with me a moment, just got to tidy up some notes I've got to get it. There is one aspect to this report that I need to add. Bear with me just a few moments. The council's original loan term the request is for this to be extended for 5 years, is repayable alongside the other loan, which capitalises the company, and the council releases its position on the PTEC board, subject to the additional funding being secured. Now that element there is just to add to what we would need to do following discussion on this particular subject. I'm now going to pass to Councillor Whittle, who may wish to add some further comments onto this, and then I will invite members for any comments they may wish to make. Councillor Whittle.
Yes, well, as most know, Leader, this dates back to 2015, where a decision was made to loan PTEC £1 million from the Isle of Wight Council's funds to enable them to set up the test bed of a St Catherine's. Basically, that didn't receive the funding that it needed of extra subsidy from the government, so it's delayed the whole venture, and further funding is needed. But for us to put funding of that magnitude into something at this stage of the game with the COVID going on is a big ask. And not forgetting, we only loaned that 1 million in order to create jobs and enable green technologies to thrive on the Isle of Wight. So best thing we can do is surrender some shares and let them find further funding. But at this stage of the game, it's not really wise for us, or we're not really able to find that sort of money. And £1 million from a little council like us is an awful lot to put into this sort of venture in the first place.
Thank you. I'll go round the team now. Councillor Ward.
I'm happy with that, Leader.
Thank you. Nothing you wish to say. Good. Councillor Mosdell.
I have found this really difficult. So I think we should encourage all renewables, but I understand, if this had been a year ago, I think I would be voting very differently to how I'm going to vote this evening. And I know that we've had many weeks of quite detailed discussions on it at cabinet level. So, I do think we should do everything we can to encourage renewables, but yeah, it's just difficult times at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Brading.
Thank you, Leader. It's fair to say that my view on this one has changed a few times, and we discussed it several times, because I'm all in favour of the green agenda, definitely in favour of employment, obviously, and renewable energy. It is the future. But I will be supporting the recommendation of the paper for the simple reason that with our current financial situation, and I know the pressures on children's services at the moment, to invest £244,000 at this stage, I can't support that part of it. So on balance, I will be supporting the recommendation in the paper for that very reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brading. Councillor Abraham.
Yes, like Councillor Mosdell and Councillor Brading, I did have concerns, as you know, when we spoke about it at Cabinet. Indeed, I remember when this sort of come up in 2013, listening to the debate. The problem that I have, nobody really understands or knew about what the technology was, and it's still very much an unproven technology. But I'm glad we're not actually putting physically any money into it, and I will support the recommendation.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hastings.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, as somebody who has long thought we should be involved in tidal energy ever since the French got involved and invested in the 60s, and they are now getting a return on it. But we didn't get in at that time, and this is a slightly different project. And from an environmental perspective, I was actually 100% behind this, and that was my stance from the off, until we started talking deeper and thinking deeper, and the implications, etc., the pandemic we find ourselves in. And then I screwed on my economic head and came up with a different result. And I'm very pleased. Well, I'm very pleased that we've got this recommendation, because I can support that, because it does mean it can still go ahead, but we don't have to put the funding to it further. So yeah, I'm happy to support it as it stands. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peace, but Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As I think probably people are listening to this will realise, this has been a difficult and much discussed topic. I sit on things rather differently. I will support the proposal as it is. However, I will say that I was fully in favour of investing more money into this project. I'm an ex-engineer. I do understand technology. I know it's not quite there yet, but we've got to be investing for the future and the long term and not looking at what's happening in the next couple of years. So I would have invested fully. Because I just think it's essential for our whole economy and our environmental agenda. That said, I'm happy to go with Cabinet majority and responsibility and go with the proposal as it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, do you want to comment as well?
Thank you, Leader. I think the recommendation we have before us is a good compromise. We had a wide spectrum of opinion in Cabinet, but of course the situation that we faced when we first started this project is now very different. And I, for one, would have been concerned at handing over £250,000 now and then finding in a few months' time we've got to take that same money out of essential services. So I think this compromise firstly allows us to support the continuance of the project. It gives a level of control to the board to raise the money by using some of our shares to do so, and it still gives us a foot in the door, as it were. So I would be happy to support the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Tyndall, have I asked you? I can't. Sorry, I apologise.
I will support the recommendation, and my various thoughts about it have been reflected by the other speakers here.
Thank you very much. So I think I've asked everybody. I just want to I'll read the recommendation, and I'll ask perhaps for a seconder in a moment. And there's also then the amended point that I made earlier, which I'll read. So the recommendation is at page D12, option C, not to make any further investment in PTEC at this time. And option E, to authorise PTEC to raise the required funds by selling up to 2/3 of the council's shareholding in the company. And in addition, that the council's original loan term is extended for 5 years, is repayable alongside the other loan which capitalises the company, and the council release its position on the PTEC board subject to additional funding being secured. So that is what we're voting for. I'll recommend it if we have a seconder. I see Councillor Hastings' hand, so that's a seconder. And if we can now go round, I'll go around for the record. I vote in favour, so for. Councillor Brading.
Leader, apologise, it's the Chief Executive again.
Okay.
I think your normal practice has been just to reflect on the outcomes of the scrutiny committee as well. I'm not sure you've done that yet.
You're right. Summarise, I would say summarise now. Informed members, scrutiny committee agreed to support the recommendation in the report. So they were fully, and that's actually very important. And I thank you, the Chief Executive. Cross-party group scrutiny and their conclusion was reflected in the report. And as members will see and the public will see, this is a very, very comprehensive document. Is that sufficient, Chief Executive? I just want to make sure I've dealt with it properly.
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So, Councillor Brading?
For.
Councillor Ward?
For.
Councillor Abraham?
For.
Councillor Mosdell?
For.
Councillor Whittle? You're on mute. Wait a minute.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Tyndall, for? Councillor Tyndall, for?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hastings?
For.
Councillor Hutchinson?
For.
And Councillor Peace?
For.
And myself, for. So thank you very much, Cabinet, for that. We now move to item 7, which is Cabinet members' announcements. Now, we've had a number of these already from different people. So if you don't have anything to add, that's absolutely fine. I'll go through the list I've got. Councillor Mosdell. Thank you. Councillor Brading.
Yes, please, Leader. I'd just like to make a couple of points, really. First one to talk about is school buses, a topic that's in the press at the moment. I want to first of all thank my senior officers, to Suzanne Smith, Martin Goff, Mike Griffinthorne, and the whole team really, for the way they've dealt with what has been a difficult situation. I just want to clear up one thing. We did not scrap the contract. We've not cancelled the contract. No. Not scrap buses, etc. This was a contract that was ending. So the contract, we had no contract at all. We had to procure a new contract. There were quite a lot of bidders, in fact. Southern Vectors weren't the only bidder, but Southern Vectors were a successful bidder for the contract, which is good because obviously they're an island business. But the procurement process gave the contract to Southern Vectors, and it then became a three-stage process. During the time of the previous contract, it was well outdated because there was less people that needed free transport. Popularity of certain schools changed over the long period of time the previous contract was on. The Free School Open, which changed the demographics of where schools were located on the island. So the first stage was to put in place a home to schools transport that fulfilled all of our statutory requirements. But we were aware, as were Southern Vectors when they got the contract, there were certain routes the Southern Vectors needed to look at a special scholars service, which they did as quickly as they could. And then we were also aware that there will be certain pockets that need to be picked up after that, using minibuses, taxis, and we put that in place as well. And equally, since then, there's been things brought to our attention, and that's where the praise to officers. They've addressed every issue that's come to our attention. There was an issue regarding the route through your way, Leader, actually through Nightingale, Whitwell. There was an issue through Elveston Garden Village. There was an issue with West Wight going to Cowes, as a non-catchment school. So officers have worked really hard to put in place all the solutions, address everyone's queries as soon as they've come through. It will settle down now people are back at school. Yes, there's been a few issues with any new contract, but the way that my officers have worked, especially today, they worked really hard today when there's been a real tragedy on the mainland for a school bus crashed in Winchester. Yet my officers have still found time today to sort out some Isle of Wight issues as well as the major incident they've been dealing with in Winchester. So I'm full of praise for all my officers, and I want to thank the parents for their patience while the new contract's just been settling down. So I hope that's the end of the school contract bus issues. This is a new contract fit for purpose for the future. I just want to also touch on school attendance. I'm not a great one for sharing data very often, actually, but obviously there was a big anxiety around pupils going back to school. What happens is now every school has to fill in a return by 12 o'clock, and at 12 o'clock the next day we get data of all the schools, attendance numbers, and the Isle of Wight's in a really good position. If I just share with you, at primary level, 87% of primary pupils in the country are back in school. The Isle of Wight's at 93%. At secondary level, 83% of pupils across the country are back in school. We're at 91%. So some really, really strong numbers. And that's because our schools are working with the parents. If there's any anxieties about going back to school, the head teachers are working with the parents to convince them and show them and prove them that the school is a safe environment. The caveat I would give to that is that it's based upon schools that have actually taken the time to fill in the return. It's a simple number return. There are still some schools on the island that aren't pushing the button every day to submit their number, but we are confident that we're working. We know their numbers because we've spoken to those schools. We're in a really strong position. All our schools are back open safely and educating the children, which is what we wanted to happen, and we'll keep monitoring the situation to make sure that level of education continues. And I thought that's worth mentioning. We're in a good position and a good safe position going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your professional, comprehensive picture as always. Councillor Ward next, I think. No, have I covered you? In
yes,
you already. I have. Yeah. Thank you. Wayne, did you have anything you want to add? No, thank you. Barry, anything you wanted to add?
Just to back up what you said earlier, Leader, about meeting or conversations rather than meetings with the MP regarding housing numbers that are coming forward through the white paper and our review of the island plan and how we're actually going to be looking shortly at the numbers, and we will probably publish something after Christmas, and we will be looking for island solutions for island problems.
Yeah, and that's our mantra. So thank you very much for that, Barry. Gary, anything you want to add? I know you've given us a bit.
Yeah, please, Leader. It's really to just give everyone an update with regards to LeBlanc. As you know, we've secured a really prestigious event to come to the Isle of Wight, which involves 5-star dining and some cycling around the Isle of Wight. Unfortunately, it's a bit sad and a bit depressing, really, but as a result of the announcement made by government with regards to the increased lockdown, or not lockdown, but the increased COVID-19 measures and the restrictions, we're not able to hold LeBlanc later this month. It was due to be happening at the end of September. The good news is it's only postponed. So they are actively looking at and confirming some dates, but I'm reliably informed that that the riders and all the other original participants are fixed and ready to go for springtime. So LeBlanc will be coming. It's just going to be postponed by a few months until we get out of this COVID nightmare we're in. And I want to give a bit of a thanks, actually, because a huge amount of work has gone into getting LeBlanc to this island in double quick time. Yeah, we've got island businesses who are directly involved and will be involved next time around. The Isle of Wight Pearl, the Royal Hotel. Jack is the events guy at the Ventnor Botanic Gardens. He's pulled out all of the stops. We've got Adam from Tramezzini's, one of the restaurants in Ventnor, and also our own council officers. You know, they really have pulled out all the stops to make this work for our island in double quick time. And it's just a bit of a shame that as a result of the increasing COVID risk that we've had to postpone and move it back a few months. So it's not all bad. It is coming. It's definitely on, and I guess it just gives us more time to get things really, people really excited about what's coming to this island. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Gary, and thank all those involved, because I know how hard you have worked on that with your colleagues. And I'll come back to that in a moment. Stuart, is there anything? Sorry, Steve Hastings, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Leader. Not much from what I read out earlier. I think that covered most things, but there is one thing I just want to mention. Because we've been in the pandemic situation and lockdown, some residents will have what I'm calling a lockdown backlog of general waste black sacks from the 15th of September. There will be comms going out on this, so it will be communicated. From 15th September, they will be able to take those black sacks to the household waste recycling centres, commonly known as the tips.
That's going to be well received, I suspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's another piece of good news. I'm sure the media will pick up on that one. Councillor Hutchinson, is there anything else you wanted to add? You've certainly done a lot of today.
I think I've probably said enough at the moment, Leader. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I just wanted to, the cabinet, Brian, sorry, yeah, Brian, did you want to come in? I saw your hand. I'll get used to it, Brian. I sometimes get names mixed up.
That's okay. First of all, I'd like to just thank you for inviting me to be on the cabinet and the cabinet member for corporate resources, which when I look through this, it's got 20 plus areas of responsibility. So thank you for that. But as you know, effectively, I've only been in the role since this Monday, because I was on holiday the week before. But during that time, I've already gone round and spoken to some of the, well, not gone round, virtually spoken to a number of people, a number of managers, Debbie Downer, Dave Martin. Today it was Sarah Teague and Sharon Betts, Ian Lloyd tomorrow, and sometime next week I'll be speaking to Justin Thorpe, and no doubt I'll be speaking to other people, so I get a full handle on the role itself.
Yeah, don't worry, Brian, we won't forget you. Trust me. Finally, I just want to say, and it's a message for the community, really, we do appreciate the volatile nature of the COVID-19 situation. We've been fortunate on the island through to some fantastic work across the piece, that we are in a better place than many. but we must be very careful. I would just say be vigilant and really follow the guidelines. Employment is a big worry for this cabinet, for this council. We realise that furlough ends in October, and we are trying to do as many things as we can to bring events to this island that will boost the economy. We've got the Tour of Britain, we've got the Diamond Races proposal coming forward for the motorcycles. We've got a whole range of things, but most of all, we want to keep our community safe. And Councillor Hastings and I have, even at the local level, put this as absolute priority. So I just want to reassure the community there are all sorts of things being proposed. Keeping the community safe is number one, and probably sits as number one, even above our finances, which is why I think we spent so much money doing what we did best, and that is looking after our community. That won't go away. We are very excited on it, and I thank everybody for that. So I'll move now to item 8, which is the forward plan. There are 4 items for the next month, which I was going to focus on. 8th of October, we will have the Forest Road Junction response. Members will recall the road collision that happened in Forest Road and the various things around that. So that Councillor Ward will be fronting that. We also have the Newport Harbour Master Plan, which Councillor Whittle and the team from Regeneration will be bringing forward. We will have the Public Space Protection Orders, which Councillor Peace will be leading on. And we also, as Councillor Abraham has already indicated, we will have our housing strategy document, which is a much wider thing than just the housing numbers. And Councillor Barry Abraham will be leading on that. So that is what is coming up in October. The forward plan has been published. It is on the website if people want to look at it. And unless there's anything else, oh, sorry, I have to now move to members' questions. I do apologise. I do have a question, actually. Well, I don't, because Councillor Ward's going to have it, but I'll read out the question. It comes from Councillor Garrett, first of all, who asks what recent issues have been raised by residents and businesses concerning the construction of the St Mary's Junction, with A, specifically the Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Transport, that's Councillor Ward, and B, the Isle of Wight Council and its contractor, that's Island Roads, and what actions have been taken by the Cabinet members to provide a steer to ensure issues are addressed and negative impacts are minimised. So Councillor Garrett, who I know is on the call today, and I probably could have let you read that, but I hope I've read it accurately for you. Can I thank you first of all for your question? I'm sure you're aware that we have a Transport and Infrastructure Board, and Councillor Ward sits on that as well and deals with that. So I'm going to ask Councillor Ward to respond to your specific question. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Andrew, for your question. I'd like to give you some background first to show you how seriously I take the conduct of this project. I have made 4 site visits to this site to be shown around. The last one was with our new head of highways, to be briefed on what the issues were, what the progress is, where the potential pitfalls can be. So directly from the project manager, I get that. I recently spoke to the leader and briefed him on the situation with the project, and I told him how impressed I was with how well the project was being managed. If I have a question, the project manager can answer it from his fingertips, quite literally. I personally visit the site. I drive up 2 or 3 times a week just to see what the traffic tailbacks are like, where the delays are, if there are any, how the progress is going. My partner thinks I'm crazy, but that's how seriously I take it. I want to know and have my finger on the pulse. If I could just get to the other bit. Done that bit. If we do have a problem, the project manager will tell me. A serious problem, he will tell me what the issue is and what he intends to do about it, and basically seeks my agreement to his action. I've never had to contradict him. Like I said, I'm very impressed. I have a list here of questions, and there aren't many that have been directed recently. 5 individual inquiries and 3 from yourself, Councillor Garrett. The first one is the removal of parking restrictions in Carisbrook Road. I mean, that happened some time ago. We are now addressing the opposite issue of, do we put the yellow lines, take the yellow lines away again? BT Openreach raised one issue. Councillor Garrett, you raised the one about egressing from Hampshire, from Crescent Road to Forest Road. The team are monitoring that and put signage up. Potential damage to Isle of Wight Council data connection during construction. The cables were lowered with no loss of service. Reader transport, extended delays on southbound approach from Cowes. Now that was the issue when the trees were pruned, just as about we were to go into quite a difficult phase. That was addressed straight away on that day, and I spoke to our head of highways about that. And so, as I said, the issue was addressed to Island Roads and solved that day. In fact, in that morning. Extended delay on Forest Road approach. Issue investigated. Found to arise on first day of implementation of temporary signal control at New Forest Road Junction. Issue monitored and found not to be recurring. The other one, concern about impact of overnight works on Forest Road on residential amenity. Again, Councillor Garrett. Issue investigated related to extended overnight work to plain carriageway and lay final surfacing completed over one weekend. No subsequent overnight works planned in this area. Concern for future access arrangements, and this was Riverside Salvage, who we both know what the gentleman involved is and his issue. I have met him twice on site and listened to his proposals and his complaints and what he wants done. Unfortunately, he wants us to make special arrangements to suit his business, and I don't think that the highways regulations can be bent to do that. That's what I'm advised by officers. The delays in August were known about, planned, and issues, factors put in place to mitigate the problems. That was well advertised, media in the paper saying what was going to happen and what the delays were. Considering the complexity of this project, I think it's going really well. Okay, it is not only on schedule, it is ahead of schedule, and I know how the project manager has dealt with issues to keep it on program and to keep it going forward. So I just want to impress upon you, I am on this project and I've got my finger on that button. Now, you ask how many personal complaints have come to me. Only one, and that was Riverside Salvage. Now you might think, oh, only one, why not others? If I can tell you that Island Roads actually tell people who complain to contact me directly. Can you imagine that? But they do. I have never had a complaint about the St Mary's project from a member of the public directly. Only that very one. So, so as I said, I briefed the leader, keep him in touch with how the project is going. Does that answer your question?
He won't be able to answer you. So thank you for answering, Councillor Ward. I suspect you've tempted fate a little bit with only having one complaint. If there are any others, I'm sure they'll come in. But what I would say, and it is important, we are on the road to this this change from a roundabout to a traffic light control junction. There will be other issues along the way, but our belief is that it will solve what was a really frustrating problem and also alleviate things. And can also thank Island Roads for adjusting the adjusting the arrangements at Coppins Bridge, I probably would like to see a white line as it reaches Coppins Bridge to stop people turning right. So we'll discuss that one. Councillor Garrett, can you hear us?
I can indeed, Chair.
I feel I ought to just ask if you have a supplementary.
If I may, and I think there's at least one issue there. I am aware that Councillor Ward has had another complaint because I've been copied into that. So somewhere that clearly slipped through his count there. The reason for my question, and then I'll finish with a supplementary on this, is the formal reports cover the big ticket issues of is it on time and is it on budget, but members, and I've consulted with some members, certainly to the north, reflect the fact that for individuals there is a growing frustration, a growing, but in some cases some distress in terms of the impact of the delays on, for example, getting to hospital appointments on time or whatever. The whole Rolls Hill issue showed what can happen if just a single road is closed, and certainly I made representations around Palance Road and White House Road, which were also down for closure until thankfully they were postponed. There were concerns about the closures on Gunville Road and whatever. So I'm grateful to Councillor Ward, and I hope he'll accept my gratitude on that he's paying attention to this. I'm sure I had no doubt that he would be. What I would ask him is, in this most difficult phase of things, it's always been described as the most tricky phase of doing it, where the roundabout itself seems to float around, the cones have to move every single day, that he stays very alert to this and actually gives those steers that for individuals where there are small scale problems, such as say the egress from Hampshire Crescent onto Forest Road, tiny little issue in the grand scheme of things, but it has big impacts on residents. Monitoring by the project manager and officers isn't necessarily enough, and it may take a steer from the political side of things to say, look, do something very visible to show that people here can have confidence in this side of the scheme, because what I'm getting back is people's overall confidence on what the scheme will deliver is being eroded. So I make that plea, and I hope my question is, will he take that on board and look to ways of sort of just giving a steer from himself, not reactively but proactively, to sorting out some of what are these what appear to be just individual concerns, but in aggregate they add up to a big level of concern, and as I say, in some cases distress. And I'm happy to talk with him afterwards on that, and probably I should email him with more detail on that.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Short answer to Councillor Ward is probably yes.
Oh yes, without a doubt, no problem.
That's it. As I'm being very flexible, it just crossed my mind that I don't often give councillors on the cabinet an opportunity to ask questions. And as I'm in a flexible mood, I see Councillor Mosdell's got her hand up. So if you've got a question, Councillor Mosdell. I certainly have.
Leader, this is a ward question, very relevant to my ward, but I think it is really a whole island question. I would like to bring a motion to full council in October, and I would like your support to ask that we look at what better enforcement measures we can bring in for issues such as speeding, width restrictions and weight restrictions. I can see Barry and Councillor Abrahams, which others can't, thumbs up. I would like some support to do that. It might take some investment, but also I'll expand on it when I bring the motion to full council in October, but would just like to know your feelings on it.
Well, I'm already preempting some of that because I think it's a really, really important issue. I think there are some opportunities with all the things that are happening. I'm very encouraging on positive sporting events, but back to this community safety. And Councillor Ward, I'm sure he's listening. We've got a speeding review going on. I think we really should look to address some of those issues and show the island that we will keep them safe. The variety of people using our roads, just for example, which ranges from, dog walkers, children, cyclists, motorcyclists, all sorts of demographic in drivers. It is a very, very large area, and I think it's really important that we address that. I think it'll be a good motion. I'm sure lots of councillors will have something to say about it, and so that's something we can be open and honest about. So yes, I'm very happy to support that, and thank you, Councillor Mosdell, for raising that particular issue.
Thank you.
Any other cabinet members got a question? If not, I shall draw the meeting to a close. I'm a little bit longer than I normally am, but it's these virtual meetings, and we've tried to give everybody adequate time and some very important issues covered. So can I thank all the councillors and the officers behind the scenes for managing this, and I think the next time we publicly meet will be for full council, which is coming up next week, and carry on and keep up the good work is what I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you.